At the Dental MVP, we make sure that we really focus on having great conversations. But what about those moments where you really have to end a conversation?
At the Dental MVP, we use science to teach people skills to you, the dental professionals. Do not forget to subscribe to our channel, the Dental MVP, and don't forget to hit the bell so you never miss out.
In this video, we're going to give you 5 tips to ensure that you're able to end a conversation in a polite way that's not jeopardizing your relationship, but is also allowing you to get on to the tasks that you need to complete.
Tip number 1 is make sure that your body language is properly communicating that it is time to leave the conversation. Our bodies communicate 12 and a half times more than our words do. People just pick up on what your body is telling them. So use that to your advantage. Make sure that your body is showing them that I am ready to exit this conversation. There's lots of little things that we can do to make sure that our bodies are showing this. First things first, our toes. Our toes always show where we want to go. If my toes are pointed at you when I'm having a conversation, it means I'm engaged in the conversation. If I start to point those toes towards the door, guess where I'm ready to go? So pay attention to your toes and make sure that your body is kind of going in the direction of your toes, that you're starting to turn yourself away along with your toes from the person. Now, maintain eye contact because you still are having a conversation, right?
You're still need to look at you. Having a conversation. You want to maintain eye contact, but make sure that you're starting to show that your body is disengaging from the conversation. Mm-hmm. If you're leaning forward and really interested in what they're saying, they're going to continue on with the story that they're telling you or the information that they're giving you. So what you can do is making sure that you're still making eye contact, but start to pivot your toes to the direction that you're going to be going, whether it's towards the computer or the instruments or the door. And then also turn your upper body to at least a 45-degree angle or more from where your patient is sitting. So you want to actually start to pivot your body away where they can show that your attention is shifting from the conversation that you're having with them.
These little cues will be picked up. They're subtle. It's polite. It's not rude. It's not interruptive. But your body will start to say, I'm starting to disengage. And that person will start to pick up on those cues. And you will notice that the conversation will start to slow down. So use your body language to your advantage.
Yeah. One of the challenges is that we've conditioned these patients, though, to know that we can talk and work through almost anything. So they might continue talking. So we have 4 more tips for ways that you can end the conversation if those nonverbal cues are not being picked up on.
Now, no matter what tip you're going to utilize when it comes to ending the conversation, when you're having a conversation with somebody, start with a positive. Stay positive as much as possible. If you can state a positive and then use one of our tips, it's going to be much more successful and we're going to ensure that we're being polite. So let's go through the tips on how to have the conversation and end it.
The first thing you can do, so I guess the second tip you can have is to give a reason for why you need to transition the conversation, why you need to end the conversation. This can be as simple as saying, wow, this is such a wonderful story and I've really enjoyed hearing it. I really need to go grab the doctor so they're able to do your exam. So saying something positive, which gives someone a moment to pause. People like praise. They like to hear that what they're saying is interesting or that you're enjoying your conversation. So they will naturally tend to pause. And that gives you a great opportunity to then insert where it is that this conversation needs to transition to, like why it is that it's ending, what needs to be done next.
So sometimes it can be like even that you have to work on the patient, right? You're starting a conversation with a patient. The conversation is going so well and you're looking at the clock and going, okay, we actually need to start this procedure. So saying, oh my gosh, I could talk to you for hours and hours, but we only have an hour. So we better get started right now. So start with that positive and then give a reason for why we need to end the conversation.
Tip number 3 is going to be to reference the future. So when you can reference the future, it lets someone know that the conversation is coming to an end and that there's going to be something in the future that you will pick it up with, or a point in the future where you'll be able to pick that up. This could look like pausing to say, gosh, it's been a lot of fun talking to you. We're going to have to talk more about this when I see you in 6 months. Let's go ahead and get you scheduled for your 6-month cleaning. So anytime you give that future date, it lets them know that the time has now come to an end and anything that's going to be continuing on is going to be at a later point from the moments now.
Tip number 4 is to make it about them. When you're going to end a conversation, it feels really good when you can take their point of view and make it about them. We always love when people talk about us, make things about us. We are our favorite people. So the more that you can make it about them and be authentic about it, the better.
Mm-hmm.
What this looks like is something like, hey, I know you got to get back to the kids. Let me
Mm-hmm.
get you finished up. Or I can't wait to see you in 6 months. It's always a pleasure seeing you. Let's get you on your way. Or I know you got to get back to
Yes.
work. So let's get you on your way. Make it about them. Take something that you know personally about them and use that to future reference and end the conversation.
Now, tip number 5, I'm sure you guys are all thinking about those patients that no matter what, they can continue talking. You're backing out of the room and they're continuing on. Like,
you're literally
just
like
you've
halfway
given
out
them
the
every
room.
sign that
Like,
the conversation is ending.
yeah.
And you've even said, like, we have to really get going now. So for those patients, you can resort to some other body language cues that will help you to really end the conversation when you need to be a little bit more forefront with how you're interjecting.
One way to do this is that you can kind of do an interruptive touch, if you will, and that's going to be like a shoulder or arm touch where someone's talking and you just kind of go, you know, it's been really nice seeing you. I've got to get going. So when you touch them, it interrupts the cycle of speech, like, what's happening? And then you have that ability to interject and say, time for me to go, great seeing you, or whatever it is you need to say. But then there's those patients that you do that and they still keep talking. You know, it's like you're touching their shoulder and they're just like, yeah, and like, we're going to have this conversation even more. And you're like, oh crap, now what do I do? So there's other body language things that we can do too. So think of when we're going to have a conversation with somebody, when we are going to give our opinion, our advice, where it's our turn to speak, what happens to our body? We usually kind of stand up tall, we take a deep breath, and we go to speak. Right? So you can actually create that moment where you're about to say something. Just a moment could be all it takes. If you throw a finger in there and say, at the same time, it's kind of that interrupted, like, wait 1 second, I have
that
something
universal,
to say.
We're raising our hands, please call on us.
Exactly. And that's the last one, is use the full hand. So if the finger doesn't work and the breath doesn't work, then raise your hand. When we raise our hand, this is that like international sign of stop, or I have something to say. And it's going to stop them from talking. So hopefully that's going to be a non-rude way to interrupt the conversation when you have to actually interrupt them and be able to interject.
Now, we want you guys to be able to delve into having these great conversations that are building rapport, getting to know your patients, understanding what the barriers may be. But we also realize we have a finite time for these appointments.
Yes.
So we can't spend our entire day getting to know someone and all of the barriers. And it really is that multiple stage, multiple appointment situation that we run into. So we want to make sure that you have some tips and tricks to be able to end the conversations, and doing so in a way that isn't going to disrupt your ability to build rapport and trust with your patients as well.
I hope you liked this video on how to end a conversation, and never forget to subscribe to the Dental MVP.